Take a look at a few news things. This was interesting. Steam, this is for video gamers, so I have not much of a clue about it, but there's an add-on called Kill Switch, and they didn't check it with all versions of the Steam hardware. So it has a magnetic kickstand, but if you use it the wrong way, it causes some kind of terrible problem. It reduces the fan speed, which I guess can cause your Steam to overheat and maybe to break it. So they're calling this $1 million mistake. They're selling a peripheral which, when added on and used the way you're likely to use it, is going to harm the device. So that should lead to trouble. So Linux, now I thought from previous articles, I saw this, that the kernel would now contain Rust, but that is not the case. The Linux kernel does not contain any code written in Rust yet, but now it supports Rust. And this article isn't very clear, at least I can't understand it very well, but I think what it means is that you could add kernel modules that were written in Rust to the kernel, like drivers and stuff.
What's the guy say that he will use Rust to redo the Linux kernel?
Well, yeah, but they say there's not. They say it has not happened yet.
Yeah, the guy is doing it. This is the complete rewrite of the kernel.
Well, yeah, and there are other operating systems that are in fact already written in Rust. But anyway, right now there's no Rust code in the kernel, but I guess it's coming.
Yeah.
And this is a step towards going there. They say, in fact, there's some serious problems with it. Apparently, the entire Linux kernel is supposed to be compiled with GCC, but GCC cannot compile Rust yet. So this is what I've been thinking all along, ever since I learned some Rust and wrote some projects, and Caitlin used it a bit. They said it's not really ready for prime time yet. It's nice, but it's not really finished. It doesn't have all the necessary features and support around it. So they say, like, the CLang compiler does support it, only has full support for a couple of architectures, 64-bit but not 32-bit. So, you know, it needs more development before it's ready to really be in the main Linux kernel. But anyway, it's a step towards it. I know Microsoft is also considering adding Rust code to its kernel, but I don't think there's any versions of Windows that really have it in there yet.
Microsoft is doing the C compiler to do their libraries to be more like Rust.
Yeah, I know they said doing the libraries more like Rust. Yeah, they said they're talking about using Rust. Microsoft is very aware of these security problems.
So for the C library, it's not using Rust.
What's that?
For the C library, C compiler, the C++ compiler,
Yeah.
Microsoft, so it's not using Rust. But then
Oh, I know. Well, that's what they used to do. I think we're talking about, Microsoft has had a security program for years where they have special libraries they use for C to make it more secure. That's what they've used in the current generation, but they're considering switching to Rust to make it even more secure for part of that code. Just like Linux, not the whole kernel, but certain parts of it. But it hasn't happened yet. Because, of course, when you change anything that fundamental, it's a big deal. You have to change many other things that depend on it. Anyway, this I thought was pretty amazing. So Symbiotech is a rootkit for Linux. And this thing is pretty awesome. It's been around for November 2021, and what it does is it attacks many parts of the fundamental part of the operating system. It hooks the Berkeley packet filter so that all your network monitoring tools cannot see certain traffic. So they can have network traffic that you won't see. It loads by the LD preload directive, which is something that loads before any shared objects. It's one of I think it's an environment variable that loads. These are things that are launched automatically every time you start an application. And here, Symbiotech lives here, and it hides certain ports, hides certain files, hides certain packets, drops certain packets, and so on, so that your operating system runs and you can no longer see all the things this rootkit is going. And they talk about it's really quite clever. It injects itself, or it hides a list of things, of file names to block that are encrypted. Anyway, it sounds like a pretty advanced rootkit. And they hit very hard to detect, very hard to remove. So nobody really knows how many of them there are. And this one was interesting. There's a group called Conti, a famous ransomware gang, but somebody betrayed them and leaked out all their tools publicly. So this new group just imitated them, called Monty. They've just modified the tools a little bit and called themselves Monty, but almost all the tools are the same. And one thing that I noticed here is that the tools do some interesting things. If this is the one I think it is, maybe not. No, this is just the one. Yeah, this is the one. I didn't know this. They do this. They use a vast anti-rootkit library, which is legitimate antivirus, and they use it to kill off your antivirus and all your endpoint defenses. So I was not aware. They say it's a fairly common thing that malware does. Also, Gmur, another rootkit remover, they've used these rootkit remover tools to kill off all the antivirus. So I guess that's not the default operation of these things. I think they're using the code to get a driver in the kernel that's signed, and then they can use it to nuke things, which is a common technique. Since everything in the kernel has to be signed, they find a vulnerable signed object that is trusted, and they use that. So hippies have always said that marijuana and LSD and stuff have beneficial effects, and back in the 60s and 70s, there was a lot of research of psychiatrists that said it's true, and now they've made these things called CBD oil that do not make you high, but the pills presumably keep the medical effect, and now they've done the same thing for LSD. They made a version of LSD that does not give you hallucinations, but it does relieve depression, and they tested it in mice, and they haven't tried it in humans yet, but they expect it to work from the mouse trials. So it's good. These psychedelic drugs that have been used by people in America greatly since the 60s have been banned for research by Schedule I, and many people complained they should be available for research. They probably have some legitimate medical use, and I think now there's a big movement to turn them into legitimate drugs. So these guys developed a way to build chemicals just like Lego. You can control chemical reactions so they can just build things one by one, even in living organisms, and they won the Nobel Prize for that. So you can make more careful designer drugs, which is very good. And this guy is the grandmaster that cheated, and Wall Street Journal did an investigation. He claimed he cheated just a couple times when he was young, like 12 or 14, and they found that he cheated more than 100 times. And he's almost certainly cheating now. And they say they have to catch him. The grand champion of the world, Magnus something, just resigned his game rather than play with this guy because he was sure he was cheating, but he couldn't prove it. And they say it's almost impossible to prove because a person at grandmaster level does not need much help. Just a couple of moves of hints are enough when carefully done. But this all comes from the fact that for several years now, there are AIs that are better chess players than any human in the world. So if you used a computer, you would beat everybody, even the grandmasters. So all he has to do is have some way to get covert signals from a computer. And there are so many ways they can't prove it. Like there could be somebody in the room making a gesture. He could have some kind of device on his body that gets a Wi-Fi signal. And it's almost impossible to be sure that none of that is happening. And they very strongly suspect that it is happening. And this means, in a way, I would say grandmaster chess is kind of in trouble as a sport. If computers are better, then how can you ever be sure people aren't using computers? Pretty soon you'll be able to get brain implants to connect you to the computers and stuff. It's anyway. So YouTube is criticized for radicalizing people, and now they're being sued for that. Somebody is suing someone because people watched YouTube and they saw ISIS videos that were recommended by the YouTube algorithm, and it radicalized them, and then they went and killed people. And so they're claiming that the woman that got killed can now sue YouTube for radicalizing those people, and this is an important test of whether they can punish internet companies for their recommendation engines. And there's a lot of people that would like to do that in the government, but it isn't clear whether they're going to be able to. Anyway, I think that's enough of the news.